Just give it a couple seconds for the stream to pick up. And we are live. Welcome viewers, welcome listeners. Today we are continuing the fabulous conversation with the ever lovely, ever talented Elizabeth Hobson, leader of Justice for Men and Boys. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming back and joining me again. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. It's a pleasure to be here. So thanks for inviting me back.
Thank you. Thank you. I know you did have a little bit of time, so I wanted to take the opportunity to bring you back. There were a couple of things we didn't cover last week, especially in the arena of politics, which is kind of your wheelhouse. So yeah, I thought it'd be great just to kind of wrap it up with another hour to kind of get into a few of those topics.
Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. Well, I did notice in one of your interviews with you and Greta that you all seem to be quite a fan of what's going on in the political space, especially in the US at this very moment.
Well, I don't know if I'd say I'm a fan of what's going on in the US at the moment.
Yeah, good, fair point.
I'm a US fangirl. I've come to it late in life with some very US critical ideas, and then, you know, through my reading and listening, you know, it became apparent to me when I was probably about 25 or something when I realized that, you know, the United States of America is the only country ever founded on philosophy.
It's a fair point.
It's a beautiful liberal philosophy, and, you know, the Bill of Rights,
revolutionary.
It's so fantastic. It's revolutionary, yeah, and it's, you know, the purest, most wonderful expression of liberalism that has ever been put to paper. And, you know, the history is fascinating, and I think there's a great, I've forgotten who originally, oh, no, I haven't. I have forgotten who originally said it, but I found it in a book by Daniel Hannan, which is a good book. It's called How We Invented Freedom and Why It Matters. And the quote is that the American is the Englishman set free, which I think is lovely. And so, yeah, so I'm very emotionally invested in what happens in the US these days.
Would you care to comment on the happenings presently? I know that you and Greta are both fans of Trump. I don't think I'm giving anything away by saying that. Obviously, this is quite chaotic for what's going on with the election. And I myself, I'm kind of on the Trump train. It's definitely better than the alternative. But yeah, do you want to maybe share a bit of your view as to what do you think is happening at this moment?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we do have to be careful, because I did read, someone mentioned something to me, and I read recently that it's from a specific date, or once all, you know, the contested kind of seats have been called again.
Yes.
Anyone who contests it on YouTube is going to have their videos removed.
Yeah, but if the rules are very specific. If we say something along the lines that there was widespread fraud,
yeah,
and if we say something along the lines of that affected the outcome, then I'm going to be in trouble. But I think sharing our opinions of it, I think we're all right. And for me, I don't necessarily think there was widespread fraud.
No, I don't think there needed to be.
Yeah,
it was very close.
Possibly, I think there was specific things that need to be looked into. I don't think it was widespread, but yes, please tell me your thoughts.
I mean, I think, I don't know about. I'm slightly skeptical about the election process that happened. But you know what I do know is that Well, I mean, to be honest, it was weird because I always watch the US election, stay up all night,
Good.
drink,
As you do.
enjoy. And I woke up on the morning of the election, the last one or this one, and I felt really stressed, and I felt it sort of in my waters that this wasn't going to go how I would hope.
Sure.
And I got really, like, I felt really down about it. And then it suddenly occurred to me that had or if Trump wins, I mean, it would be just ideal for the UK, you know,
Yes.
because we could get some solid trade deals going. But as far as for America, you know, which I care about deeply, I think what would have happened would be that the Democrats would have been, you know, staved off for another 5 years. That's it, you know, and he would have the opportunity to keep on making progress in spheres where, you know, progress needs to be made. But then it would be likely that a Democrat would be in next time.
Quite right.
Just because of the way, you know, US elections seem to go. And with, you know, with the Democratic Party in office there, whether it transpires that, you know, it's now or next time, it's very troubling, and I have deep existential fears for that country.
I tend to agree. My co-host for the 10K Run podcast is in Minnesota, so he's an American. He's not probably not as plugged into it as I am. I'm really down the rabbit hole on this. And I don't know if you heard, but in this session of Congress, they have banned gendered language in terms of the bills that are presented. You know, you can't say like fireman or father or mother and all of these other types of progressive statements. I think this is exactly what the dread you're feeling. That's exactly what I fear is coming. And there doesn't seem to be much of a check if Trump doesn't get in, if there is no Republican backstop, because as of last night, it looks like it's going to be tied in the Senate. The Democrats could run a lot of things through if Biden gets in, and Harris, his VP, will kind of sway the power in the Senate. So it's not great. It's not great. And I'm sure this is what you're concerned about.
Well, yeah, you know, there's obviously, Biden has said that Title IX will be back in force, which will lead to kangaroo courts discriminating against young men in universities. And you know, I'm concerned about the economy because jobs are really important, and Trump's been pretty solid on that. I mean, you know, the whole COVID thing notwithstanding, and I have no doubt that, I don't know what you get banned for with regards to COVID.
Don't worry, it's my risk. It's fine. Speak your mind.
Well, I have no doubt that the Democrats are well into the Great Reset idea.
Right. Which
I think is a very concerning development. And there are, I mean, you know, incarceration as well.
Quite right.
Harris in particular has a terrible record for imprisoning black men.
Yeah.
Specifically, you know, whereas Trump, he took little baby steps, but he made a real difference in reforming the criminal justice system. So he reduced mandatory minimum sentencing for a load of offences, particularly drug offences.
Yeah, non-violent offences.
And it disproportionately positively impacted black men. And, you know, I mean, the criminal justice system in the US is it's horrendous. They've got more people imprisoned per capita than any other country.
Correct.
And
it can be quite daunting.
Yeah, I know. And it's just, these are people's lives, jobs and liberty of people's lives.
Absolutely.
And Trump was making a positive difference. And also, you know, like you mentioned about the gendered language, I find it very divisive. You know, the whole social justice thing, everybody has to be judged, you know, where they are on the oppression and therefore how entitled they are to speak. Yes. Even. And that is just gonna get worse and worse.
I'm quite concerned for that progressives wing, the social justice. I call them the woke walkers. It's quite troubling that they seem to be in power now. I mean, I think the next midterm is in 2022, so it's possible the Republicans could take the House, but it's still 2 years, and a lot can happen in 2 years. I completely agree with you. I think Trump was great for the economy. I think he was really trying to do some political changes in the prison system. He wasn't a typical Republican. No. He was kind of playing the middle, and he even gave the Democrats a couple, you know, things that they wanted as well. So he really was trying to do good for the American people. So I'm looking at what's happening today. Today is January 6th. The Senate is counting the votes today. So as we speak now, there's a massive rally, and I don't know what time. Pence is going to be either accepting or rejecting the electoral votes. So the fight is on today. This is kind of the last.
Yeah. I you know, it hadn't even occurred to me that it's the 6th today, but it's 11 a.m. in Washington. I don't know what time that is for us. Yes. But yeah, wow, that'll be interesting.
Oh, yeah. So that's my second appointment today, is I got to start watching that for the podcast I do on Sundays. So
well, I might join you in watching that.
Indeed. You're more than welcome. Just kind of briefly, I think it'll be interesting for people to know, for the 2016 election of Trump, where was your position and what was your reaction to his election in the US?
I was very active promoting him on you know, my Facebook and Twitter pages. And I'm trying to remember to what degree, because I wasn't on the Trump train from the very beginning. I wanted Ted Cruz to be the candidate.
Me too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to work out to what degree it was that I really liked Trump, and to what degree it was that I absolutely was so scared of Hillary.
Yeah.
And I can't quite place, I can't go back in my mind and remember, you know, I think maybe it was equal parts. There was definitely both going on. I remember having a big my mum over it, and on Facebook, and my final word was in all caps, "He is the peace candidate." And because, you know, I mean, I think that's the Hillary's war hawkery.
Yes.
Was just, it's despicable, and it's so odd to see left wingers, or it was so odd to see left wingers like endorsing her. It's like, it just made no sense to me whatsoever. I feel like for some people, politics is skin deep.
Right.
Very literally. And I mean, it's all of these woke people, to be honest. It's like they don't care what the policies are, as long as they're presented in a woke way. As
Correct.
long as, you know, they can't be found to have said something awful about grabbing pussies, you know, they're A-okay. And then, yeah, I stayed up and I watched it, and I had a friend, Will Franken. He's a comedian. He's got some good sets on Comedy Unleashed, and he's done 2 Messages for Men events as well. And he was like, he saw it as a fight between good and evil.
Wow. Yes.
And he was on the phone, and we were just like, you know, and we were really psyched, and just, and then, yeah, when we realized, it was quite late in the event, I seem to recall, that it became clear that he really was going to be the winner, and we were just thrilled. And I remember sort of it becoming time for the kids to get up to go to school, and the little one was at nursery at the time, and I sneaked upstairs to my boy's room, and our eldest, 2016, so he was 7 or 8. Right. And I woke him up, and I was like, oh, I won't say his name, but I was like, young man, the man I wanted to won. And, you know, got them all ready, and I was just so happy. And I planned to sleep because I've been up all night.
Oh, right, yeah.
So eldest was at school, youngest was at nursery. I lay down on the sofa, and I just couldn't sleep for like a while.
Brilliant.
And I listened to Volunteers by Jefferson Airplane on repeat, which it's my victory song. And the lyrics are like, look what's happening out in the streets, got a revolution.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So, wow.
Good day. That was a good day. 4 years ago. How amazing is that?
What's that?
4 years ago. How amazing is that?
I know.
Well, 2016 was another big year for us over in the UK, which we have finally seen the fruits of, that maybe we can also touch on, which of course is Brexit and the UK's departure from the draconian dictatorship of the EU. Would you care to chime in? Were you a Brexit supporter also in the beginning, or where did that whole thing come from?
Where's my finger going? There, look.
There it is.
Yeah, I was a huge Brexit. Absolutely. What I never got, you know, everyone got sick of it. I was like, I just couldn't get sick of it. I just wanted more and more Brexit. It was such a great debate, and there was such moving speakers in the sort of arena, you know. There's a really good documentary that Spiked put together that takes the sort of left-wing case for Brexit, and Kate Hoey was great, and Jacob Rees-Mogg, Daniel Hannan.
Yes.
So, oh, it was just incredible. And yeah, I mean, it's another place where I just don't get it, because I was raised on the left, and one of the things that I retain from the is the idea that power shouldn't be centralized. It should be devolved as much as possible.
Exactly.
So to me, it's a no-brainer that if you're left wing, you know, and someone says to you, shall we give power to like this unrepresentative supranational kind of body, where, you know, and or shall we give it to the MPs that people directly vote for and can look in the eye in their constituency offices, at least before COVID? You know, I would think that any reasonable, consistent left-winger would be like, well, obviously
you would think
we do that, you know?
Yeah.
But the left on the whole didn't seem to do that. I believe Jeremy Corbyn was a Brexiteer. I'm convinced.
Early on, apparently he was. Right?
Well, he's, as far as I know, he's never actually confirmed what he put on his ballot paper.
Right, right.
But I mean, that was, I mean, I was actually quite disappointed in him, because I find his policies very unwise, but I always thought he was a man of courage and principle. And my belief is that the reason he campaigned for Remain, to use the term very, was to keep his party together.
Yes.
Really. And I mean, that was very misjudged, actually. With hindsight, we can see that quite clearly, because they were destined to go nowhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was alive with it. And my father-in-law actually was a councillor, a local councillor with UKIP for
Excellent.
years, a very good one. And so I was like just continually sort of sharing links and stuff with him. And my mother-in-law, they're actually separated, but like I was sharing stuff with her as well. She's like a sort of classic Thatcherite. She actually campaigned for Thatcher.
Nice.
Back in the day, and met her as well over tea and scones. So yeah, it was like this big family thing. And actually, my family, although my family are generally quite left-wing, everyone who was over a certain age was a Brexiteer.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was like, you know, but then you came down to kind of Generation X, like my mum's age, and I think they're all ruined by university, and they were all Remainers. And you know, they all had that, well, you're a bigot if you're voting to leave, and it's because you hate brown people. And I'd be like, you know, it's our membership in the EU that stops us bringing in brown people. You know, it opens the gates to a lot of largely white people, but it also closes the gates. You know, we can't have like as many Indians as we want.
Correct.
Immigrating because of our membership in the EU. You know, it's like, oh.
I mean, the racist talk around Brexit was the most ridiculous thing. As I say, how are we racist against Europeans? Right? It didn't make any sense. You know, it's, as you say, it's mostly Europeans. But like you say, I think is it George Oswald that said it, that some ideas are so dumb you have to be an academic to believe them.
Bingo.
I think you're very right that the universities, which again government run, they're pushing a government good message, more government good, you know, this sort of thing. That's where you get a lot of these Remainers. And
which they take as proof that if you've got an education, then you would vote Remain, you know. But it's
that's what they think, exactly.
I mean, I suppose, yeah, they are right, but right for the wrong reason.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So, I mean, now that it is official and you're involved in a political party, is there a position of the party? Have you all scrutinized the deal at all? Any commentary?
I haven't read the actual deal. I mean, my understanding is that it's very big. I've read about it and it seems quite fair, and I'm just a tiny bit disappointed that we didn't just throw the chessboard and take a no deal, because I thought that would have been really cool. But it seems reasonably fair from what I've read, and you know, it's such a fantastic investment in our children's sovereignty, you know, their political rights and their voice is. So I'm really proud of our nation for doing that. And that was another occasion, actually, when I stayed up drinking and enjoying and texting my family, and rounded it all off with a rousing rendition of Volunteers, which, you know, I mean, the sort of Got a Revolution lyric is great, and it's a really like upbeat kind of, you know, song, but there is a really inappropriate lyric where it goes, one generation got old, one generation got soul. And it's like, you know, for Brexit in particular, it was like it was old people who saved the day, man. They saved our asses. Which I mean, because that really disturbed me. The stuff that all the Remainers, well, not all the Remainers, but some Remainers started bringing out about, oh, we should have had it in 5 years when all these old people were dead, and you know, they shouldn't have a vote because they're not even going to see it, you know, and all this kind of stuff. It was like, I find it so disturbing and so sad and so unbecoming, man, like to have that hostility towards people who have lived a long time and
built this country.
Yeah, built this country, exactly. And you know, a lot of, or that kind of generation saw World War II. It's like, you know, they've got potentially an awful lot of wisdom. Sure, they're not all very wise, but you know, I'm sure they're more wise per capita than we are.
Indeed. No, it's definitely an exciting time, and I would listen to the arguments, because I wasn't here. I couldn't vote. If I could have voted, I would have voted Brexit. But I would hear all the arguments, like, where are we going to get the food from? Like, you mean there's only food in Europe? You know, there's no food elsewhere in the world? We can't get beef from Argentina or wine from Australia? Where are the doctors going to come from? It's like, well, India has one of the best medical programs in the world. You know, they're not in the E. So all of this noise. I remember when the vote actually happened, I was celebrating, and I was even more excited to move to the UK. I moved in 2016, and I was there in some of the marches in London, Brexit Now, and, all of these great things. And I would hear these arguments, even see some of the documentaries to supposedly rebut Brexit. And there was nothing. There was nothing of substance.
No, I mean, it was pure scaremongering.
Yes.
Scaremongering. It was mudslinging. Like, well, you're a racist. Well, if you're not a racist, your friend's a racist then anyway, and it was, I mean, the scaremongering really did my head in, because it was like, they would say, yeah, we're not going to have any food. There's going to be, a super gonorrhea outbreak and all of this kind of stuff. And I'd be like, probably not. And then they'd sort of go, you don't know. And I'd be like, yeah, but you don't know that there's going to be super gonorrhhea either.
Exactly.
You just, no one knows what's going to happen. But, the arguments for Brexit were all about principle. It was the principle of sovereignty and the principle of being in charge of our own destiny, and the principle of being able to trade with, like, poor nations like Africa and India who need our support, and who, to be honest, we kind of owe it to. We don't owe it to Europe, we've done enough for Europe. So it was, more good times. And with regards to whether our party has a position on it, we have posted some sort of articles and stuff on Brexit. We didn't have an official position, but everyone involved was a Brexiteer. And, I mean, we always try to keep our policies, like, specific to the world of sex equality. But although saying that, I'm writing a manifesto at the moment, so I don't know. Who knows what will happen? Anything can happen.
Fantastic. Well, let's just quickly dovetail back to the gender dynamics and the sexual issues in especially in the UK. There were a couple of things that we touched on in our last conversation. One of which was you mentioned about how we're seeing a lot of rise of people taking a faith position sometimes, like the revival of the God pill, as we call it. A lot of people have gone through the red pilling and these different types of things. A very good friend that we mutually have, Natty, has recently come into faith. I thought that was quite amazing. So in terms of the evolution of the gender dynamics, do you see a resurgence of, like, traditional faith and these other things?
In a word, no. I think the toothpaste on that is out of the tube, and I'm very happy for people who do find solace and direction and guidance and whatever they find, community as well. I think people tend to find in faith, and I think that's lovely. And I mean, I've got some icons behind me over here. There's Mary of the Sacred Heart and Jesus. I'm looking at the moment over here at a lovely kind of image of Saint Joseph, who's one of my favorites, with baby Jesus. Because I love the stories, and I think they're really important, and I think it's really important that people know the stories. So, because they're part of the foundations of our civilization, and also just because so much literature and art and rhetoric invokes and references biblical stories. And it's like, if you don't know the stories, and I can confirm that if you're sending your children to, you know, state school in the UK, they will not know the stories.
Right, right.
If I mean, I don't know if they have been going to the school that my children have been going to, they won't know the stories.
Really? Wow.
So, you know, I found that I had to instruct them in that, which is a big change, because I felt like I had Christianity just rammed down my throat at primary school when I was a kid, and I hated it. But, you know, now I'm glad that I have those reference points, and I'm glad that I can pick up on those references. And I do think that our morality that we take for granted, I don't think it can be, or it would necessarily be, reached through simply thinking, you know, the way Sam Harris kind of says, well, you just reason it out, you know, and like, I don't think that's what we do. It's like the idea of human life being sacred.
Yes.
You know, that's not necessarily, it's certainly not, you know, it's not a utilitarian view. You know, a utilitarian view would be like, well, we've got this dude who's quite sick, we could invest loads of money in healing him, or we could just, you know, let him die and harvest his organs and save a load more people. You know, that's sort of, I think that we have an instinctive kind of revulsion at an idea like that. But if you think about it logically, it's not clear.
Yeah,
You know?
it's not the same. Like a very good friend of mine. So I built a church. I was once a minister. Not really involved. Not really involved much anymore. But I still do a show on Sundays, and we discuss religious topics. But a friend of mine, he's become complete atheist. Right? He and I were both in the church. He's like full on militant atheist, and he was expressing the views also of Sam Harris and Stefan Molyneux, who also tried to explain morality as, you know, human flourishing. If we could agree on what's best for the individual, you know, we can come to the similar morality. And my response to him was, that's a lot of academic thinking to come to something as simple as stealing is bad.
Yeah.
And the problem is, even if you have the rational reasons for it, it doesn't make stealing bad. It's just inconvenient or a social disconnect. And while I applaud people trying to come up with a morality, I agree with you that some of these stories, it's just better. Stealing is bad. You know, rape is bad. These things.
Yeah. Well, we are story creatures, and we respond to stories in a way that most of us just don't respond to rationally constructed arguments.
Indeed.
And it, you know, they grab us by the soul. But yeah, I mean, I am an atheist, but that's because I just can't bring myself to make that leap of faith. But it's not clear to me. Funnily enough, I had a big conversation last night with my partner about this, about there being a religiosity in rock and roll.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that's true.
You know, so sorry, but what I was going to say before I diverged into memories was that it's not entirely clear to me that our collective societal loss of faith has been a positive and net gain.
Sure.
Because I do think that human beings are instinctively, we have this religious instinct, And so if it's not going into organized religion, it's projected into other things. And, you know, it might be rock and roll. And as far as I'm concerned, if it's rock and roll, that's probably quite positive, because there are some really fantastic messages within rock and roll. Black Sabbath and well, all kinds of bands, you know, they discuss serious moral issues, you know, and so that's great. But it also might go into radical identitarian politics. It might go into like consumerism, you know, maybe it'll go into sports, and, you know, sports is probably quite benign as well. But if it's going, you know, I think a lot of it troublingly goes into politics, especially on the radical left side. And, you know, you can see it, they're zealots.
And as I explained it to my same friend, he has now become quite big government focused. And I explained it to him as like, yeah, this is the next biggest moral agent, if you don't have a God, is going to be the state. And that is going to be your stomping ground. So I completely agree with you. I'm not hardline. I don't really care where people fall in terms of faith. I do believe faith has helped us build civilization, and I think it is important. And I completely agree with you that even if it's not a organized religion, it is important to find some expression. We don't have a lot of positive alternatives, but I hopefully that search will continue, and, you know, people will find something that helps them.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. So, I mean, in that same vein, in terms of understanding, again, the sexual dynamics, the faith thing has definitely been interesting. Also, the rise of MGTOW. Are you familiar with MGTOW? And is this something that you're talking to your boys about?
Not yet, because they're slightly young, but I would hope that they would at least spend some significant period of time going their own way, so they can, you know, well, they would be safe and I wouldn't have to worry about them, but in that regard, but also just so they can get to know themselves and get to know what they need and want and what their boundaries are before getting kind of caught up in the whirlwind of romance. And yeah, I'm also somewhat hopeful, because I think it's important that women in particular are convinced of the need to have sex equality and not to allow men to be discriminated against in order to privilege women, and boys and girls. And I think that if women start realizing that their goals of like settling down and having a family are just not going to happen, they might start going, what's going on here? And, you know, their eyes will be opened. So
I mean, that is the hope. And I have seen a couple articles come out. I think it was in Eve or Evie magazine, one of these US publications, where a woman laid out the case that marriage is on the decline and it's the government's fault. That, you know, the divorce rate being an issue, the child custody, the discrimination against men, and these other things. I don't think it got a lot of traction, but it was kind of the first crack that we see kind of forming. But in terms of on the men's side, you know, we've got the MRAs, the men's rights activists, and we got the MGTOW, probably like red pill aware, all of these different things. Unfortunately, I don't see a lot of growth happening with the MRAs. I see a lot more growth with the MGTOW movement.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that the MGTOW movement is definitely the most kind of vitally growing kind of
Yes.
developing sector within what you might term the manosphere. And they, some of them have some skepticism about men's rights activism.
Yes.
They're just convinced that we have any hope in hell of changing the system. But as far as I'm concerned, I couldn't sleep easy at night if I didn't try.
Right.
So
no, I agree. And while I empathize with MGTOW, I've got to fight. It's not lost until you give up, sort of thing. So I try to share as much of a positive message and all of these things. I do see this trend. I worry about it, as you say, affecting people who might want to settle down. I think over 35 single women is like at an all-time high. Marriages at an all-time low. These are realities.
Yeah, I mean, it might be that we have to go through some pain to realize that we're going wrong and rectify it, would be the hope.
Have you met any women that have kind of been shaken up with this reality?
No.
Not yet.
Not
what a shame.
But I'll keep looking.
I mean, there's a very funny guy I watch on YouTube. It's called Replicant Fish. It's an English guy, and he's I guess he's MGTOW at this point, and he will look at a lot of the female dating coaches that recommend women do some pretty ridiculous things, like sow their wild oats in their 20s, party it up. It's all going to be okay later. And every so often, he does find this one woman who says, that feminist ideal of, live all you want, you could have it all these other things. It's not working out that way, especially as some women get older. Very few, but I think even the writer of what was that TV, Sex in the City, the author, and even her now, I think she's kind of come back and said she regrets that she didn't actually settle down and have kids.
I heard that too, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. But I would have thought you may have been connected and maybe you've heard some personal stories or anything like that of women kind of wishing they'd done something differently.
No, not as yet. I'm definitely going to look up that Evie article, though. That sounds interesting.
I'm going to see if I can find it and I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Because again, I'm kind of in the manosphere. I'm kind of with the red pill aware gentlemen. So every so often we get these nuggets and I'll do commentary from the YouTube channel. So I need content. So with that in mind, I've got about maybe 10 minutes left here. I wanted to touch a little bit on something that many people would perceive as the lost boys or the generation of lost boys. We've got a generation of men, probably 2 generations of men now, raised by women or single mothers, all of these other types of things without a male influence that's come in. I'm sure this is something that you're very dear to your heart. What do you see happening with, the lost boy generation?
I think that the situation is very, and I think it's important to make it clear that when this kind of lost boy generation is referred to, there are a lot of pretty sorted fellas within that. And to be honest, I think that this generation, I think they're becoming more found all the time, actually. And you see it with, the popularity of Jordan Peterson, and you see it with the sort of the way they're collecting into, little sort of communities where they can support each other and share ideas and give each other support, so it's like I was in a debate at the Battle of Ideas 20-something, 2018, I think. And it was called From Jordan Peterson to Incels, Have We Got a Generation of Lost Boys?
Right.
And I think that I've got an awful lot of hope for young men. I think they're becoming pretty rad. And, you know, if they are lost, then perhaps they're lost to the radical feminist left. And I would hope so.
And I mean, let's be very honest. There are a lot of women on the feminist left, and guys like to get laid. So, you know, there's incentive.
That's also true. I think, I mean, for me, what I see, you know, as what I would define as lost is your kind of pro-feminist / feminist young man who's been to university and is terrified of accidentally sexually harassing someone, so will not, you know,
initiate.
pursue, and won't initiate. Yeah, you know, I think that is really a really sad development, and I think that I would define them as lost, and I think that they've lost some element of their humanity and masculinity in order to sacrifice it for the membership in, you know, the cult. But there's so many really switched on young men. I think that I feel positively.
There's hope for the future.
Yeah.
I would categorize myself as probably one of those. I was raised by a single mom. You know, my dad was there but wasn't really involved. He and I had our first conversation when I was 18. But when I moved out here to the UK and I was truly on my own, one of the first journeys that I went on was kind of rediscovering the roots of masculinity. Mm-hmm. And that kind of led me into a lot of these things, you know, the work by Rollo Tomasi, for instance, The Rational Male, Jack Donovan, The Ways of Men.
That one.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book. It's definitely teaches how to be good at being a man, which is, that's the basic question. Like, what does it mean to be a man, obviously? So I agree that for those who are searching, there is community. There are resources. As you said, the rise of Jordan Peterson, I know he's become a father practically to this generation, which is phenomenal.
Yeah. What a lovely way of putting it. It's totally true. Yeah.
Completely. I mean, one of the big influences for me was a guy called Richard Cooper. He runs a YouTube channel called Entrepreneurs in Cars. And he looks like me, bald guy, beard, very successful in business, went through a very bad divorce, but he's trying to coach men on, you know, how to be better, how to be stronger. He's getting a little extreme for my taste, but he was kind of my father figure, kind of, you know, growing up in this whole thing. And I think finally we're starting to see that come through the internet. Even to a certain extent, I saw it in the media. I don't know if you've watched this TV series, Cobra Kai on Netflix.
No, but I don't have Netflix, but I'm aware of Cobra Kai. Yeah.
Yeah. Very unusual. It's about the fathers. The fathers are, you know, the stars of the show, and they're shown in a very positive light, which, as you know, is not normal, and it's a very successful show.
I know, but is it? Well, I think it might be the new normal, you know, and the reason I say that is because of Coca-Cola's Christmas advert.
Which one is this? I don't know if I saw this.
It was great. So it's this, it's basically a dad, his daughter gives him her letter for Santa, and he goes on this epic adventure journey to deliver it to Santa at the North Pole. And it's just, it's a real tearjerker. And I think that it's very unlikely that Coke did that out of the goodness of their hearts.
Right.
I think that Coke did their research and, you know, looked at Gillette and, you know, everything that's going on, and went, what's going to sell our product is a positive message about men.
I hope that is a continued trend.
Yeah. I think yeah.
No, I agree. And we've seen the destruction of a lot of great franchises in media that have not upheld that. I mean, I don't know if you're a fan of any of the like Star Trek or Doctor Who, for instance, and what is
fortunately not a massive one. I'm more of a Star Wars.
Well, you've seen what they did with Star Wars.
Well, yeah, but to be honest, I've always been a, you know, the original trilogy girl anyway.
Absolutely.
But then saying that, because I've watched them all again with our boys, I think I did judge the unfairly, to be honest.
Yeah,
I was very aloof about them, but they are quite fun. But yeah, they've really messed up that franchise. But yeah, I just kind of emotionally distance myself from it. I'm like, well, that one's not for me. That's for those other people.
I mean, I've made it very clear that I don't know what the last one of the Disney series was. I didn't even watch it. After The Last Jedi, I was like, after The Rise of Skywalker or something.
Yeah.
I don't know if you caught The Mandalorian though, because that's the complete opposite, where they've actually got The Mandalorians. I highly recommend it. Not to give anything away, but again, a very strong male character, and they got strong female characters in it as well. But they do it in a way that actually works with the story. It doesn't feel forced. It actually goes really well. So I recommend it for you.
Okay, I'll try and give that one a go.
Fantastic. Well, we've reached the top of the hour here. I do have to run off to another appointment. Just very briefly, you are writing a book we discussed very briefly. Do you want to maybe give a little teaser as to what men and women can expect?
Yeah, sure. It's a collection of my writings on sex and gender politics. And it will be called I can't remember. Is it freedom versus feminism or feminism versus freedom? I actually can't remember. I kind of ummed and ahed for ages. And yeah, it's under construction at the moment, and I'm hoping it'll actually be out by February. But there's just a lot of neatening up that needs to be done to work that hasn't seen the light for quite a long time, and also a lot of introductions to write. I'm looking forward to writing the acknowledgements, actually, because I've got so many wonderful mentors.
Fantastic.
So that's going to be a big pleasure. And yeah,
we could expect to see that on Amazon as a Kindle and a paperback.
Bingo.
Fantastic. I look forward to it. Hopefully I'll come out for a book signing. I would love to do that.
COVID allowing, yes.
COVID allowing. But Elizabeth, thank you so much again for your time. It is always a pleasure. You're a fantastic guest, and you've got so much insight and stories to share. I really value the time that we share.
Thank you very much. How lovely.
Fantastic. So guys, that will be the end of it here. I will be doing the 10K Run podcast with my co-host Amos Joe this Sunday, I hope, at 5 p.m. We'll also be doing Religion Zero at 3 p.m. on this Sunday. Elizabeth, very quickly, I will have all the links below, but if somebody want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
My direct messages are open on Twitter, so slide in there by all means. My handle is at @anti_fembot.
Fantastic. And again, everybody, I thank you all for watching. Elizabeth, thank you again, and I look forward to meeting up with you sometime in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thanks for watching, everyone.
Bye-bye.